Week 11 of the fantasy baseball season. And here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for this week. The first guy, Juan Soto, of the Washington Nationals. So Soto, he's been on this list a lot this season here. But it's very mind-blowing to me that he's only hitting .214 on the season. Everything else is pretty decent, though, stats-wise. 14 homers, 31 RBIs, 38 runs scored, 5 stolen bases, a .214 average, and a .365 on base. So right here, I just don't get it. He's putting the ball in play. He's only struck out 46 times in 248 at-bats. And his power still on par is Soto, where he's probably going to still finish the year with 25 to 30-plus home runs this year. But the RBIs are down and the batting average is way down. But everything else is pretty solid here for Soto. But the last couple weeks, he's really struggled. 2 homers, 10 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 150 average, but still a 333 on base. So right here, Soto, he just got to find the holes. The home runs are coming, and the hot weather still hasn't warmed up all the way in Washington here on the East Coast. Once the weather really warms up, because it's only been 70s, mid-80s tops here in the East Coast. Once it gets to the 90s and higher, that ball's going to start flying, and that's when Soto really gets things going more than anything in the second half of the season. June 16th versus Philly 0-4. June 17th versus Philly in a doubleheader 0-8. June 18th versus Philly 1-2 with a run. June 19th versus Philly 1-5, a homer, 3 RBIs, a run scored. June 21st at the Baltimore Orioles 0-3, and the 22nd in Baltimore 0-2. So right now, he's got a day off here. Today is Soto and the Nationals. And then they go to Texas, which obviously is a great hitter's park. Obviously indoors, though, but Soto's too great of a hitter to be hitting .215 on the season. So once this guy gets going, there's going to be no looking back. And right now, while the RBIs, the batting average are way down, this might be one of the last weeks you got a chance to go out there and get him, because the power's been coming. Just now, everything else has to come here for Soto, because he's got the power going. And if the average goes up, it sky's the limit for him. So right now, while he's not performing at a Soto-type level, and his value is definitely down this season here, this is the time to get him, because once he's off to the races, I don't think he's going to turn back, and he's going to have a monster season, is Juan Soto. The next guy, Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals, another guy last season who had a magical season and probably the best season ever for a catcher, with 48 home runs, 121 RBIs, with a .273 average. Obviously, I'm not coming into this season expect to hit 40-plus home runs once again, but this season he's way down there. 11 home runs, 34 RBIs, a .211 average, and 25 runs scored. The thing that gets me is the RBIs and the average. Same thing like Soto, more than the home runs here with Perez. Like I mentioned, I don't expect him to hit 40, maybe 25 to 30. And the last month here of the season, he really hasn't done much either. 5 homers, 18 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a .218 average, and a .277 on base. So right now he's banged up again with the thumb injury here. And he's been out of the lineup now the last couple days here. So hopefully he gets back and gets things going. And this guy's still one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in fantasy baseball. So right now, while he's slumping as well and a little bit banged up, I would go out there and try to make a deal for Perez, because we know what he could bring to the table and what he's capable of. The last few games here for Sally Perez: June 15th at San Francisco 0-4, June 17th at Oakland 2-4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. June 18th at the A's 0-5, June 19th at the A's 0-3, June 20th at the Angels 2-4, a homer, 2 RBIs. And June 21st at the Angels 0-1 before he left the ball game. And June 22nd at the Angels, he sat with the thumb injury. So right now, with those factors, the low average and the thumb injury here for Perez, and a bad on-base percentage, I definitely would go out there and get him in a deal if I could. We know catch is a weak position, and this guy's too good to have numbers this low. The next guy, Matt Chapman of the Toronto Blue Jays. So Matt Chapman, they got him from the Oakland Athletics, and so far, he's been a bust in my opinion as Chapman for this Blue Jay team. On the season, 9 home runs, 27 RBIs, 35 runs scored, a .214 average, and a 300 on base. I know last season he only hit .210, but at least he had 27 and 72. And you figured Chapman would be great in this lineup with all these great hitters: Toscar Hernandez, Vlad Guerrero, Bichette, Gavin Biggio. But that just hasn't been the case here in the last couple weeks here for Chapman. 2 homers, 4 RBIs, 8 runs scored, an awful 171 average, and a .237 on base. So right here, he's even available, is Chapman, in 24% of fantasy leagues. So if he's on your waiver wire, for some reason, go out there and pick him up. But right now, I would make a deal for him, and you pretty much have to give up nothing. Maybe a low-end starting pitcher on your roster to get him, because he's another guy. Once he could get in a groove, he could finish the season 25, 30 homers, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he could even finish it in the season 250. June 17th versus the Yankees, 1-for-4 with a run. June 18th versus the Yankees, 1-for-4. June 19th versus the Yankees, 0-for-2 with a run. June 20th at the White Sox, 0-for-4. June 21st at the White Sox, 0-for-4. And June 22nd at the White Sox, 1-for-4 with a run. So right here, this Blue Jay team, they've been scoring tons of runs, and Chapman's not getting into the mix. It's just a matter of time, in my opinion, before he gets into the mix of things and he gets on a hot streak and gets going. So right now, you don't have to give up much to get him at all, and this is a perfect time to get him. The next guy, George Springer, his teammate of the Toronto Blue Jays. So Springer banged up with elbow discomfort here, and hopefully he's not out long. Hopefully it's day to day, but Springer, another guy, not performing over the last few weeks. On the season, on the surface, the number's pretty decent. 13 home runs, 34 RBIs, 40 runs scored at 260 average, and a 333 on base. But the last few weeks here factored in with the injury. 2 homers, 4 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, only a 209 average, and a 292 on base for Springer. So Springer, we know throughout his career, he's injury prone. Last season, he missed almost half the season, only 300 at-bats, but he did still hit 22 and 50 RBI. So now with this elbow injury, his value is definitely going to go down. And if he does have to go on the injured list here, this would be the time to pounce on him, because I don't think he'll be an all-season type of thing. We know Bryce Harper's had the elbow injury this season, and it's kept him out of the lineup here and there, but he's still putting up monster numbers. And obviously with the DH, that always helps. So the last few games here for Springer, June 15th, versus Baltimore, 0-for-5. June 17th versus the Yankees, 0-for-4. June 18th versus the Yankees, 0-for-1. June 19th versus the Yankees, 1-for-4 with a homer and RBI, a stolen base. June 20th at the Chi Sox, 1-for-5 with a bag. June 21st at the White Sox, 0-for-3. And then the 22nd at the White Sox, he sat out. So Toronto, they have an off day here today. And then I think that day off could help them. And they go to Milwaukee, which obviously is a good hitter's park, especially this time of year, with the weather warming up. So hopefully Springer doesn't go on the IL. And right now, while he's not performing at Springer-type levels, this is a perfect time to go out there and buy him low. And I think even a decent hitter or a pretty decent starter will get the deal done. And the fifth and final hit I look to buy and trade for is Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros. So the Astros and Altuve open a big 4-game set at the New York Yankees starting here tonight. Obviously, these two teams have been top teams in the American League over the last 5 seasons. So on the season here for Altuve, not a great year. 13 homers, 24 RBIs, 35 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 269 average, and a 345 on base. So right here, the RBIs are down, but we know he's top of the order here for this Astro team. And the batting average ain't Altuve-esque, even though it's still 270. But last season, he just had a monster bounce back with 31.83 and 117 runs scored with a 278 average. So those numbers are definitely not on pace to what he did last season. And the last couple weeks, he is struggling. 2 homers, 5 RBIs, only a 227 average with a 306 on base. So right now, while his batting average is down and he's not performing at Altuve type of levels, his value definitely took a little bit of a hit. And you could buy him low as well. I still think you got to give up a decent price to get Altuve on your roster, but he's not putting up the numbers that I know he's capable of. And I think he could start this weekend at the Yankees. He always has that extra fire and juice, especially with the sign scandal and the history between the Yankees and Astros over the last 5 years. So the last few games here for Altuve, June 15th at Texas, 0-for-2 with a run. June 17th versus the White Sox, 0-for-3. June 18th versus the White Sox, 2-for-4. June 19th versus the White Sox, 1-for-4 with a run. June 21st versus the Mets, 1-for-4, homer and RBI, 2 runs scored. And June 22nd versus the Mets, 0-for-3. So right here, he's been slumping his Altuve. I think it's a minus slump. And this is a perfect time to go out there and get him, because once he gets going again, he's going to put up those good numbers and definitely pay great dividends for your fantasy team. So that's a few hitters I look to buy here for Week 11 of the fantasy baseball season.